In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the new Cinepeer Weebill 3E gimbal. Zhiyun did send this gimbal to me, but all the pros, all the cons will be my own opinion, and I'm going to be breaking this down by design, initial setup, overall performance, pros and cons. So let's jump right in.
This intro intentionally left blank.
Okay, so first let's talk about design. The gimbal that they sent me is a combination of aluminum and plastic here, but it's a good hard plastic and by no means feels cheap at all. When I first took it out, I was actually pretty impressed by the build quality. The tripod is actually a very hard plastic. Which, you know, I'd say for a bigger gimbal, it might be an issue, but for this one, it's actually very sturdy, very capable. And like most gimbals, we have a trigger button, we have a wheel that can be customized, and then we also have the joystick that we can use to pan or tilt, obviously the record button, and then the M button, which offers for the different modes, such as pan, follow, POV, all of the different modes that it has, which I will get to later, and then going into the menu button, as well as this scroll wheel here, which doubles as a button for selecting. And the menu system is actually pretty simple to follow. It actually reminds me of the old iPod menu system with the scroll wheel. You simply hit the menu button, scroll through, press the scroll wheel to select, and then hit the menu button to go back. So very easy to use, very simple, no complaints there. And then something else that I love is having the locks on the gimbal. So it's very cool. Right now it's actually turned on, but if I power it off, lock these, like that, then the gimbal won't go anywhere, no matter how you tilt it or whatever. Or, you know, another cool thing is if you are putting it away, you can simply, to kind of save a little bit of space, and lock this one like that. And then I'll do this. There we go. Then you can make it very nice and compact like this. Keep the camera on, slide the base plate off if you'd like. There we go. You can store it like this. And, you know, if you want to make it even smaller, you can of course take the little tripod off. And I mean, just holding it here, any of you that have a gimbal know how small this really is. This will easily fit inside a backpack. You know, and I think it is also sturdy enough to be protected as well. And then also the gimbal alone weighs 2.31 pounds and it's got a payload capacity of 6.61 pounds, which obviously it's a small gimbal. If you have a small light mirrorless camera setup like this, it'll be more than enough. I've actually used it with this lens and I've actually used it with a bigger lens and also with a small little on-camera monitor here, just so you can see what you're doing a little bit better. So the payload capacity is great and this thing is super light. So next I want to talk about the initial setup. As soon as I took it out of the box, I found that, you know, it almost seemed like it was pre-balanced to like smaller cameras or something like that. I don't think I've ever had an easier time balancing a camera than on this gimbal for whatever reason. Maybe I just got lucky, I don't know. Maybe they kind of pre-balanced it to a degree for most small cameras, but setup was easy, balancing was easy, and then linking it to the ZY Play app was honestly pretty easy. It was as simple as turning the gimbal on, opening up the app, hitting connect, and it was just kind of connected. So all of that stuff was good. I was honestly up and running after unboxing it, probably in about 10 or 15 minutes. So, okay, so now let's talk about some of the features. One of those I already mentioned, which is that it's very light and also very portable. So it's very easy to use. You can put on a smaller camera, mirrorless camera with a payload of up to 6.6 pounds. And then you can just simply jump in, start using it right away. You honestly won't get a backache, you won't get sore arms or anything like that with some of the bigger gimbals. So to me, that's a very strong feature. Also, it's got a very long battery life, 16 hours, and charging is via USB-C, and you can also charge it while you're using it. That's a small thing because honestly, I'd say most people won't use a gimbal for 16 hours. I think that's more than enough power than you would ever need. But should you be on some kind of gimbal marathon, you can charge it in, you can plug it in and charge it while you're using it. So I obviously haven't had any issues with the battery because I'm not using it for 16 hours, so that is definitely a great feature. Okay, so another cool feature that it has, which is very helpful, especially for content creators, because I really feel that that's who this was really created for, and that is that it's got a portrait mode. So for anyone wanting to shoot vertical video, which is very common now, you can simply hit the mode button 3 times, and then you can scroll through the different options to select portrait mode. Or another way to do it is you can physically remove the camera completely from the gimbal, rotate it, and very easily set it in a portrait mode. You might have to do very, very minimal rebalancing, but anytime I switched it over, I honestly had to do, it took me about 30 seconds to just tweak tiny things. And then your gimbal and your camera will be in a portrait mode in case you're doing YouTube Shorts or anything like that. So very cool, very easy to use. And the next feature is that it has a Bluetooth shutter. With some compatible cameras, you can connect to the gimbal wirelessly via Bluetooth and then hit the record button, start shooting, and it makes things a lot easier being wireless, having no cables dangling around or anything like that. And then obviously another cool feature too is the app that it comes with. You can connect that wirelessly, control the gimbal, pan, tilt, go into different modes, things like panoramic, time lapses, things like that. Pretty common features that most gimbals have nowadays, but honestly, it's always cool to have an app, be able to connect to something and control something wirelessly. And then besides that, it's got a lot of the, very common shooting modes, things like pan, pan follow, lock mode, POV mode, also a vortex mode that lets you get really awesome rotating shots, and then something they call a go mode, which is for more fast moving action. So when you're wanting to have the gimbal respond immediately to you, all of that stuff is great, and it's great that you can switch through those modes very easily, really just hitting the mode button twice and you toggle through the different modes, which makes really using it and switching around to them pretty easy, honestly. So that's one of the things that I really loved, because as you're shooting, it's great to switch throughout the different modes should you need to. Okay, so I've had this gimbal for about 2 weeks now, maybe 3, and what are my opinions overall with the performance? I honestly love this gimbal. This is something that a lot of you might relate to, is I actually have another gimbal. I mentioned I had a Ronin gimbal. It's much bigger, much heavier, and I found myself not using it very much because it was so big, because it was so heavy. And with this gimbal, I can honestly see myself always leaving it out, always leaving it kind of set up and semi-balanced and locked, and because of its tiny little footprint that it has. But I can even see myself taking it, on things like family trips, things like that, because I always bring my camera anyway, and it's so small, it's so portable that, I can see myself using this a lot more than my bigger gimbal, because it was just too clunky, too heavy, too big. And even if I had it set up permanently, it always just seemed like this big thing that was kind of in the way. And as far as the using it, it's lightweight. I found that it was actually kind of fun to use it. It's kind of like the phrase, the best camera you have is the one that you have on you. And I kind of feel like this gimbal kind of fits that, to where because it's so easy to use, it's so lightweight, it was actually fun to use because you don't get tired or anything like that. And the footage it produces, because obviously that's the most important thing, I found it to be very smooth, buttery smooth. And I tested it walking, doing quick walking, sort of a pseudo jog, kind of speed walking, obviously doing, the known ninja walk, that kind of stuff. But even when I was just kind of doing a very quick speed walk to try to see how well it would keep up, it was actually very smooth, very buttery footage. So, I'm very happy with that. And a big difference that I noticed is that with my older gimbal, I found that I would shoot, I would get tired quickly, my arms would get sore, they feel like jello, I'd be holding it, my arms would start shaking, get backaches, as most of you know once you use gimbals for a long time. With this one, I never got tired. I could keep shooting, I could get creative, I could hold it with one arm and try things in different positions. And it was just overall a really great experience. And really, I'm just gonna use that to segue into my pros and cons. That is pro number 1. The biggest pro is just its size, its ease of use, and also when you throw in their battery life, that you don't have to constantly check to see where it's at. That's a huge pro number 1. A second pro is the price. You know, as far as I know, this gimbal will only be $249, which for that price, this is a great value. You know, I would easily buy this gimbal out of pocket for $249. It's very cheap for a gimbal, especially one of this size and with that kind of performance, and also with that kind of build quality. Yes, it's not like a, you know, a huge, super high-end professional camera that can hold like a Red camera or an Arri, but you know, for content creators, for most filmmakers, this will be more than what you need. Okay, and so now I've said enough good things about it. What about the cons? So my number one con, I would say, is that some of the features weren't compatible with my camera. I shoot on the Fujifilm X-T3, and even though the camera was compatible and the lens was compatible, I did have to plug it in and use the cable that they did provide, and it worked fine at, you know, once I plugged it in, everything worked fine. But I could not get the wireless Bluetooth to work. I could not have that. I could not connect my camera to the gimbal. Maybe it's something I did wrong. I did look up the compatibility list that they sent me, and it shows the camera is compatible, but it didn't mention anything about Bluetooth compatibility, Bluetooth shutter to connect my Fujifilm X-T3 to the gimbal itself to control everything wirelessly. And then the second con, which as I mentioned before, the trigger button you can customize, and then also the wheel in the front you can customize. However, I found that again with my camera, even plugged in, and I don't really see why this would affect, you know, it has nothing to do with the Bluetooth function of it, for example. Even with the USB-C cable plugged into my camera, I could not really customize that much. And then what I could customize really didn't do anything. The only things I could get to work is to see my aperture on the little LCD screen, which is fine, but honestly it's kind of useless. It is nice to be able to look down at it and see what it is, but I can also see that on my camera's screen. What would have been nice to be able to customize using the wheel is changing things like the ISO, you know, if I wanted to adjust one stop or two, that kind of thing, the aperture, but you know, none of that worked. So basically, the ability to customize the wheel and the trigger button wasn't too useful to me, even if I had the cable plugged in from the camera into the gimbal. And the last con I would say is a very minimal one, but it's something that's kind of nice, and it has to do with the box that it came in. So this is the box that it came in. Nice, you know, it's good quality. It's very similar to other cases that you might get, kind of like this, you know. But my con is that it just kind of opens like this, you know, which is fine. But it would have been nice if they would have applied some kind of latch system to here and a handle. You know, I was showing you this example here of, you know, this is for a light that I own, but it's nice when companies send you something that has a handle or some kind of latch system like this, so that you can just very easily close it, open it, because even though the gimbal is very portable, it would have been very cool to be able to, you know, throw it in here, lock the axes, and then have a handle and just one more way to protect it. It almost makes this nice case useless because, you know, it could very easily just open up and stuff falls out. So, and again, that's just a small little tiny thing, but that is a con that I thought is worth bringing up, because for such a nice box, you know, it makes it again a little bit useless to have no latch and no handle. More importantly with the latch. Okay, so now my final summary, my final thoughts on this gimbal. Would I buy it if I paid my own money for it? Would I recommend it? I would say yes. And one, the main point is honestly the price. So I think this is a great gimbal for beginning filmmakers, content creators, people that maybe have a smaller production company and shoot, you know, things like corporate videos, things like that, and they travel a lot, they need things to be portable. I think this is perfect for them, especially, you know, if you're someone who shoots on mirrorless cameras, lighter weight rigs. You can easily buy this for $250, throw your camera on there. It's very lightweight, the battery lasts forever, and you get beautiful footage. So you know, that and all the benefits and features coupled with the fact that it's only $250, I mean, I would honestly recommend this, and I would recommend this over some bigger gimbals that a lot of people buy that are overkill. It's more than they need, it's heavy, and there's a lot of cons to that as well. So those are my thoughts. Again, they sent this to me, but all of these opinions are my own. And again, like, subscribe, and I'll see y'all later.